Hey everyone, it's Wolfgang. Welcome to part 2 of Getting Rich the Slow Way or the Fast Way. Yesterday I posted a video. It was part 1 of this technique. Okay, so refer to that. This is pretty much self-explanatory, but if you want to see how this compares to what I discussed yesterday in terms of the outcome, you can look on my channel for Getting Rich the Slow or the Fast Way from yesterday. The numbers were different. They were smaller. This will freaking blow you away. And I encourage you, I invite you to use this technique. It's pretty darn easy. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to talk about 2 ways of building wealth. A slow way and a fast way. Okay, so the slow way is we're going to invest $100,000 in a 10-year treasury bond, which today is paying a little more than 4.5%. So we'll just go with 4.5%. Annual return, annual interest rate. The total return over 10 years, if you do the math, is the $100,000 is returned to you and you make an additional $55,296. In other words, at maturity, your $100,000 in 10 years becomes $155,296. So that's an annual 4.5% interest rate every year for 10 years. You get 4.5% in year 1, another 4.5% in year 2, but on the original 100 grand, okay? It's always 4.5% on the original 100,000 that you invested. It does not compound. So that's the slow way. We make over 10 years about $55,296, which is a 4.5% return annually. So let's talk about the fast way. We are not going to come up with 100 grand. We are either going to use our first-time home buyer status, or we're a veteran from the military. We will use a VA loan, and we will put 3% down on a duplex, a $500,000 duplex. A duplex is 2 units. Recall, or if you don't know, between 1 to 4 units tends to appreciate in value annually, kind of the same way. A house, if a house goes up 3% per year, duplexes, triplexes, and fourplexes also go up 3% per year. When you get to commercial property, which is 5 units or more, it's different. But in this case, we're talking about a duplex, which is 2 units. This particular duplex is the same $500,000 duplex we introduced yesterday, okay? This duplex is in a destination region. In other words, a lot of people travel there. And it is in a good neighborhood in that region. The rent for the duplex total for the 2 sides is $4,500 a month. And over 12 months, the total gross collected rent is $54,000. That's the gross rent per year for this one duplex. Okay, so over 10 years, we're going to calculate the gross rent for 10 years. Now, what this formula is, this is called the future value of an annuity. Okay, so we're going to assume rent increases of 4% per year. That's pretty low. As you know, sometimes rents go up more than 4%. We'll be a little bit conservative here, and we'll stick with a 4% annual increase in rent. And just to give you an idea what that looks like, if you were paying half of that, which is about $2,250, right? So that would be just a little over $100 a month increase at lease renewal time. Not a lot. It's pretty standard that you get a rent increase. 4% is pretty low. This formula is future value of an annuity. And the way it works is we take 1 and the percentage increase, which is 4%, raise it to the 10th power because it's 10 years, subtract 1 and divide by the rate of increase, 4%. So the gross collected rent, that means the sum of all the rent collected for 10 years, is $648,330. Okay? That's 10 years worth of rent collected. Now, that's the gross rent. We have to remove about 30% annually for expenses. So I'm going to multiply the gross by 70% because 30% went to expenses. We're left with 70%. So 70% times $648,330 gross, the net rent that we collected over 10 years is $453,831, okay? So that's how much net rent we made over 10 years. Now, this is where we changed things from yesterday. Yesterday, there was only 1 duplex. This time, in year 5, we are going to either do a cash-out refinance of the first duplex or get a home equity line of credit and buy a second duplex in year 5. Now, I want to tell you guys something you may not be aware of. If you go for 2 years and you have not lived in a property that you own, the first-time home buyer credit renews. So in other words, if you bought this duplex and you did not live in it, and you lived with somebody or you rented somewhere, you could put down 15% for this too. But I didn't go into detail on that. That's going to depend on how you want to pay for this. But generally, when you do a cash-out refi of the duplex, you're going to pull out enough to make a down payment on a second duplex. That duplex is going to cost $608,000. I'll come back and tell you where I got that number. It is based on the property value increasing 4% per year for a duplex. So over 5 years, a duplex increased from $500,000 to $608,000. Okay, so likewise, the rent increased after 5 years went by. After 5 years went by, we bought this second duplex, and by that time, the rent was no longer $4,500. It had gone up. So the rent for this second duplex that we buy in year 5, the gross rent annually is $65,700. So we're going to determine the total collected gross rent for the remaining 5 years. We bought this in year 5. We're going to hold it for another 5 years. So the total holding time for these duplexes, the first one we own and hold for 10 years. We buy a second one at year 5. We hold that for 5 years. So this second duplex, and I wrote this wrong. I'm sorry. This should be a 5. That should be a 5. 65,700 times 1.04 to the fifth. 4% increase, rent increase, is $355,852 gross. Now, the net rent is 70% of that because we pay 30% in expenses. So we're only left with, we're left with 70% of the gross. So the net rent for the second duplex, which we own for 5 years, is $249,097. So the net rent total for these two duplexes at the end of 10 years, the net rent after we paid 30% expenses, is $702,928. Now, just to recap here, the second duplex we bought in year 5, the money to buy that came from taking out either a second loan, a HELOC on the first duplex, or we did a cash out refinance on the first duplex to buy the second one. At the end of 10 years, we've netted $702,928,000. Okay, so that's the rent. Let's talk about the gain in the property value. Like I said earlier, 1 to 4 units, a home, a duplex, triplex, fourplex, they tend to increase in value a certain percentage each year. I'm using 3% here per year. That's kind of conservative because sometimes properties jump a lot more than that. But we'll go with 3%. So duplex number 1 increases at 3% per year. So the original $500,000 purchase price multiplied by 1.3% to the 10th power. At the end of 10 years, this first duplex, if we were to sell it, it would be worth $672,000. So the gain is the $672,000 minus the $500,000 purchase price. We made a gain of $172,000 on the first duplex if we were to sell it. Duplex 2, we only held this one for 5 years. So it also increases at 3%, but for 5 years. So 1.03% raised to the 5th power for 5 years times the $608,000 purchase price, right? We bought it for $608,000. The value of this second duplex at the end of the 10th year has risen from $608,000 to $704,840. So the gain for the second duplex is $96,840. So that was the total gain in the value of the property at 3% a year for duplex 1, and this is for duplex 2. You add these two numbers up, the total gain of the value of the property, if we were to sell them, the total is $223,840. So the gain, the total for the gain of the duplexes, we add the net rent and the increase in the value is $926,768 at the end of 10 years. On a $15,000 down payment. That is freaking unbelievable. I mean, it's not unbelievable, it's believable, but it's really cool, right? You know, $15,000 down. If you compare this to the video from yesterday, this is what I was talking about yesterday. You're going to be blown away by this. We use the fact that we're a first-time home buyer. We put $15,000 down only. At the end of 10 years, we've got a gain of almost $1 million, right? The annual rate of return on the $15,000 down payment, that was the only money we put into this. Everything else was funded from the net rent and taking out a second loan or refinancing. is 51% every year. 51% a year, every year for 10 years. That's what that is equivalent to on a $15,000 down payment. Now compare that to the 4.5% annual return we got yearly for 10 years, and we had to put up a lot more initial investment, $100,000. So it has been said that higher rates of return require a little extra risk. And I have to tell you, I have been doing real estate for a long time. I've never freaking taken a loss on any property that I bought. Never. It's always gone up in value. The one thing that you will hear real estate investors tell you is they sort of hate themselves for trading out of properties they used to own, because they go back and look and they see they sold it for X number of dollars and it became worth so much more had they held it. So, you know, do you want a 4.5% return, or do you want nearly $1 million on only 15 grand down? I think the choice is obvious. And if you're concerned about using leverage, in other words, if you're concerned about in year 5, we bought this second duplex by using leverage, by taking out a second loan or refinancing, doing a cash out refi on the first duplex. Just remember what Howard Buffett said about his dad. Warren Buffett, very conservative investor. My dad just kept placing bigger bets. He kept reinvesting the money. He didn't spend it. He would reinvest the money. So this is something to think about. This is to inspire people, because real estate is a darn good investment. And, you know, one of the coolest things about this, you know, because I've been in this business for a long time, is if you're a good property manager, if you're a good landlord, and your properties, you keep them in great condition and you respond to tenant requests promptly, and in other words, if you're providing a good living environment for your customers, you are helping out the public. You are doing a great service to the community, providing housing for people who either do not want to buy or they're in a position where they're not able to. When my wife and I were in college, we were not in a position to buy any property, and we were quite lucky to find places to rent. In this country, you can find good places to rent. If you're a good landlord, you take care of your property, you take care of your tenants, you are doing a world of good for the community. I've got 2 family members who do not want to own, because the burden of ownership, you know, having to take care of the property, some people just don't want that. They want to be able to make one payment once a month, and everything else they can call for help. They can call the property manager or the landlord to get things taken care of. It simplifies their lives. A lot of people prefer renting and not owning. So that's one of the, you can make a very decent income, but this is a necessity for a lot of people. A lot of people, we had tenants in California when we operated there who came to Silicon Valley from all over the world to work in Silicon Valley, usually not permanently. I mean, from every country you can imagine. They needed a place to live. We provided housing for so many different people from so many different countries. So it's a public good, as they say, when you're providing really decent housing for people. So there's no shame in turning a $15,000 investment into almost $1 million over 10 years. There's absolutely no shame in doing that. The world needs us, right? The world needs places to live. So I hope this inspires you that there's an incentive to do this. Maybe it's not easy all the time, but there's a nice incentive to do it if you do it right. And if you compare it to very conservative, this is a pretty low return. And with real estate, you're not taking much more risk. You know, I can't say enough about, you know, if you look at a piece of property, it's going to be there for 100 years after you're gone or more, you know? So it's a very stable sort of investment. So if you have any questions about the numbers or about any simplifying assumptions I made, please post those in the comments. I'll try to address them. And I want to thank everyone for watching, and have a great day.